Well, hello everyone. This is Al-Fadi. I'd like to welcome you back to this video series on the Quran, specifically the topic of Ahruf and Qira'at. Last time, or at least last couple of episodes, we talked about the preservation of the Quran. First, the Quranic own claim about its preservation, and last time we talked about what do modern Muslim scholars say about the preservation of the Quran, or how they claim this preservation have taken place. Today we're going to take a different angle that is extremely important for you to follow along and pay attention to, because it is, in my view, the pivotal point of how we can understand now everything that is taking place in terms of today's problems that are being uncovered. This time we're going to take a look at the preservation from the angle of medieval age. How do the medieval age Islamic scholars deal with the issue of the preservation? With me here, of course, in studio, Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, what is it that we need to learn from this particular era, which is the medieval era?
Yeah, what we're going to find is there's a disconnect between what modern Muslim scholars are saying and what the early medieval Muslim scholars said. But that something changed, that there was a change. There's an evolution in the claims they made. So let's go back and let's put the slide up and let's look at three of the medieval scholars from the 10th moving up into the 11th century. Let's start with Al-Tabari. And Al-Tabari, who died in 923, we know he is the one that's responsible for writing down the first of the tafsir and also the tahqiq, the commentaries, and also the histories. And he collected 30 variant readings. So it was very clear that he knew that these were variant readings. He knew that he didn't make any bones about it. It's fascinating. He never claimed that any of these variant readings were divine, that they had any divine origins. He was very clear they were written by men. Nothing like what we're hearing Al-Fadi and Shabir Ali and all the others saying.
Which you and I would have said the same thing.
That's right. And that's why people are so critical of Al-Tabari. They are very critical of him because he would not make these divine claims. For him, this was quite normal. These were variants written by men. Men make mistakes. Men have varied ways of looking at it. He even understood the fact that when you have different dots and different vowels, that you would put the dots in different places.
And you know what, Dr. J? If modern Muslims will tell us that exact explanation, I don't think there'll be an issue.
Exactly, because that is called textual criticism.
Right.
That is what a textual analysis should be. Let's look at another scholar, and he comes about a few years later, Ibn Mujahid. Well, hold on a minute. We know that name, don't we? He's a pretty famous guy, isn't he?
He is famous for the 7 ahruf, or the qira'at.
The 7 plus the other 14 that come after it, the other ones there, which are the transmitters, the rawis, that come after it. And he chose the 7 readings and the 14 rawis, which makes 21. Of the 30, he chooses 21 of them around the 10th century, 936. He never considered them to be divine, never ever assumed that they were divine, nor that they were from Muhammad. He never claimed they were from Muhammad. Okay? So he considered them similar to the madahib, the laws, that they were similar to laws. And you know,
the Sharia laws, you know.
The Sharia laws, you have the different 4 schools, and they are contradictory, and we even know the dates that they were there. No one would consider those laws to be divine. And we even know the dates, and they gave the dates of when you have the Shafi school and the...
Right, the schools of jurisprudence, basically.
They are, and these are known as fiqh. So he considered them to be all on the same level as them. Back in the 10th century, written later by men. Now let's then go to a third one, and this is Abu al-Qasim al-Khudali. I should really actually have you read this, since you pronounce it much better than I do.
Yeah, so Abu al-Qasim al-Khudali, yes.
It just flows out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Died in 1073, so he's coming a little over a century later. So he is in the 11th century. He collected 50 readings, 50 different readings that were variant. Yet he never considered them to be divine either. Just like Al-Tabari and Ibn Mujahid, they were really nothing more than a collection of all these different ways to say the same thing or to say different things, and putting them out there so that people can make their own opinions, so you could have your own stable that you would go to, or your own school that you would go to. That's why even when Hatun went to that, she went into the store, that bookstore, he said, well, which one do you like? Which one do you want? Surprising her, saying, mean there's more than one? Yes, if you're in North Africa, you'd probably want the Warsh one, because you would probably memorize it from the Warsh reading.
And you know what's so fascinating about the work that these men have done, like, for instance, Al-Hudayli? For instance, I mean, if somebody has 50 different readings, You can learn a lot from this reading. For instance, you can learn that did memory preserve the Quran by that time? We see that there are errors in memory. We can go back and fix some of it. There's nothing wrong with doing critical analysis like this. But unfortunately, back then in his days, it appears to be normal, acceptable. Today, it is not.
And this is fascinating what you're bringing up, because what you're telling me, and this is something that I got excited by when I heard this is what a textual criticist should do. Any textual criticism should be asking these kind of questions. Why is it you have either 50 readings or 77 readings plus another 21 or 20 readings? All of them had different readings, and you're going to see that for them, they consider this standard. This is great because it's normal, because you want to see the differences between the readings as to whether or not he got it correct or this is a better way to understand that text. That's called good textual criticism.
Right.
They were using textual criticism in the 10th century. So what went wrong?
Right.
Let's look at the next slide. What went wrong was the next century. It was the next century, in the 11th century. It began with, the belief was that this all began with Uthman in 652, and he started destroying the variant dialects. So it was that idea that if anything disagree, you must destroy it. So they would go back to what Uthman did, looking
destroying
at Al-Fadi.
The competitive
and
copies.
remember, Al-Fadi was writing in 870, so we're now talking in the 11th century, or in 1000. We're talking roughly 150 to 200 years later. They remembered what Uthman wanted to do. He wanted to eradicate anything that disagreed and to bring it back to one text.
Right.
One text. And so that in order to do that, you have finally Mujahid who comes and brings it back to 7 readings, but those 7 readings therefore have to be all given authority. And if the best way to give them authority is to give them divine authority. So therefore you start reading into and you start looking about these references in Al-Bukhari, which talks about Jibril, and Jibril being asked by Muhammad to have other dialects so these other people living there in the Hijaz could understand what he was reciting. So Jibril concurs and gives him 6 other dialects.
Jibril, yeah.
Jibril is Gabriel, as we know him as
That's
Gabriel,
right,
the
yeah.
angel. Now, what's fascinating is that Mujahid in 936 changed Hamza, which was bid'ah. Explain what bid'ah means.
Bid'ah is as if you say something is heretical.
Okay, problematic.
It's not really sound, or it's not canonical per se.
And yet Hamza was always seen as being bid'ah. Mujahid comes and says, no, he's canonical. So you've got to do something here. Well, what do? You just eradicate and destroy and just sublimate this idea that he's bid'ah. And since Mujahid is the one that chose the 7, you then put him along with the canonical text, make them all canonical.
That's right. Yeah.
And that happened in the 11th century. So the 7 then were then chosen as the canonical text. No questions asked. You don't bring up about Hamza anymore. That's that red line. You don't go beyond.
You add 3 more.
And then, but that's not till the 15th century, till 1429. Now look at the dates. We're going to get into this later on when we look at the timeline.
We have a chart for that.
Because right now we're just making dates and we're splitting them off. It's going over people's head.
Right.
So you have the 7 that is now moved to the 10, became canonical, so that every single variant reading in the 7 to 10 readings revealed by God to Muhammad. Shadi Nasr said this. And this is fascinating. This all happens and is imposed then on the 11th century. So much so, he says, that Muslims labeled both scholars and lay Muslims unbelievers if they challenged the validity of any of the 7 to 10 Quranic readings. This was imposed on the 11th century. So when you have Yasir Qadi today saying, these are the best of the best, this is the creme de la creme, talking about the 10. Why do you think he's saying that? Because from the 11th century they've been saying that. This is not something that Yasir Qadi thought up. This is not something that Yasir Qadi invented. This has been going on for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. And Shadi Nasr is saying this. Be careful. This is not something that modern scholars are just coming up at the top of their head. So when we look through all those modern scholars, Gulen, and we looked at Shabir Ali, and we look at Yasir Qadi, and we looked at these other, Yusuf Ali, they are not making this up off the top of their head. They are standing on the shoulders of a tradition that's over 1,000 years old.
That's right.
1,000 years old.
And I love the work of Dr. Nasr, Shadi Nasr. I mean, it's fascinating, the way he handled.
Shadi Nasr is from where?
I believe it's Middle East. I don't want to.
But where is he studying? Where is he teaching?
I believe it's Harvard.
Harvard University. So he's here in the West. He is all in that realm, the Western area. And over on this side, I should say, the West over here. That Al-Fadi was saying, we in the West, we have a dilemma. Because we don't have, here in the West, there is not red line. In Harvard University, there is no red line. You can ask any question you want. And Shadi Nasser is asking these questions.
Right.
We need to listen to these Western scholars, these Muslim. He is a Muslim, but we need to hear what they're saying because they are now exposing the very thing that has been around for 1,000 years. They're saying, folks, we've got to wake up and realize that this tradition is nothing new. This tradition has been here for 1,000 years. No wonder Muslims are saying what they say. No wonder Muslims cannot wiggle back or forth. They've got to continue to do so because it's been made a divine edict. These 10 have been made divine from the 11th century.
Right.
Now, here's my remit. And I want to go to the next slide. This is our remit today. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to talk to any Muslims that's watching me. If this is the case, if you're saying that these books, these Qira'at, this Quran that you're talking about, these 7 readings exist from the time of Muhammad, that they were then canonized at the time of Uthman in 652, then I want to ask any Muslim that's watching me right now, any Muslim, please don't waste my time with the traditions. Don't waste my time with Al-Bukhari. I want you to tell me, show me one Quran, one manuscript. Give me one manuscript. Show me where this canonical text is that Uthman created in 652. Give me one. And I want a complete Quran from the 7th century, from 652. When I say complete, I don't mean a little scrap here, a little fragment here, 22 verses here, 33 verses here. I want 114 surahs. I want the entire Quran. I want this book here exactly like you see right here. Now remember, I'm not looking at the English translation. I'm looking at the Arabic. I want you to come up with the Arabic. Not of these 7. Please don't talk about these 7. I want from Hafs. I want you to show me a manuscript, and this is what we're going to keep reminding you of, from the 7th century, not the 8th and the 9th. These are from the 8th and 9th. I don't want any of these. I want you to show me one script, one manuscript that equates this. And I'm talking about the skeletal script. I'm not talking about the dots. I'm not talking about the vowels. I'm not talking about the diacritical marks. I'm talking about the skeletal consonantal text. Show me one complete Quran from 652, 114 surahs, that is exactly like I see here in the Hafs text, which was chosen in 1924. Unchanged. That's my claim. That's my challenge. Because until you can do that, please stop wasting my time with these 7 and stop wasting my time with Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, and Al-Tabari, and Ibn Mujahid, and Al-Jazari. I don't want anything from the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, up until the 15th century. I want from the 7th century. Because that's the claim you're making. That's the claim Shadi Nasser, Yasser Qadi is making. That's the claim Dr. Shabat Ali is making. That's the claim every one of you Muslims have made, that you could trace a textual history of this book all the way back to Uthman. If that is so, don't waste my time. Prove it. Give me a manuscript. Show me where it is, and we'll go from there.
Amen to that. And these are very important points that Dr. J is bringing up here. And we want you to wrestle with this in a good way, obviously. And hopefully the preceding episodes here will help you continue to follow along the arguments that we are unpacking for you. Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you to our viewers. Until we meet again, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International. Also, click on the bell so that you can receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or we go live. And I would like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking on the link right below, and that way you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you on how you can give to our channel. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.